peaceful and beautiful and physical and angry all at the same time.
Were you idiot, your mind would cave in and your heart would explode within your chest.
This is going to be a shame.
Here we go!
All right, we are back at it on a Wednesday afternoon. Matt Robinson with you, finally back in the TCA studio in, let's call it Bytown, Canada. It looks different than it did when I left. Not all of you, I guess, knew that I left. We'll talk about it in a second. We're on social media at Tall Can Audio. Would love it if you'd give us a follow there. And subscribe to the pod wherever you're hearing us right now. Lots to talk about here. Some things that have sort of been missed. I want to talk a little about the Ryan Dinwiddie hire by the Ottawa REDBLACKS. Want to talk a little bit more about the PWHL following the conversation we had on Monday about Lansdowne 2.0. Maybe some Leafs and Sens towards the end. We'll see. In the meantime, we're going to have a pint. This is from the Nickelbrook Brewing Company called Wicked Awesome. This has been around for a while. Most of you, if you're into the craft beer thing, have heard of it, have seen it. And that's what I'll be riding with today. To tee things up a little bit, don't forget, on Thursday morning, Cheryl Pounder will be in studio for the first time. You know that's going to be wicked awesome. She's been on the show a few times before, but that's always been done remotely. She is in town to cover some Ottawa Senators action, and on the off day is going to make a little time to come on in here. So we're looking forward to having a pint with her and talking hockey of all sorts: Olympic hockey, PWHL hockey, NHL hockey. We'll get into it here. The rivalry series started poorly for Canada. We'll see if she's got any thoughts on that. And if you missed it here over the last little while, we've had a little bit of a TCA Book Club going, and we'll link to those in the show notes. But James Duthie has been here. Oren Weisfeld was on the show. We talked to Mark Hebscher. We talked to Andy Petrillo. It's been a lot of fun talking about those, and I hope you've enjoyed those. I'm certain not all of you will be interested in all of the books, but we've tried to conduct the interviews in a way that sort of gives you a window into what's going to be in the book, but not in a way that you will have had to have read the book to enjoy it, and kind of get these guests to elaborate on their own journeys and the topics they're covering along the way here. So I hope you've enjoyed that. And if you are interested in picking up any of the books, as I've mentioned before, I hope you'll consider doing it through our affiliate links on Amazon. You pay what you were always going to pay, but it kicks a few bucks back. Keep the lights on here in the TCA studio. So we'll link to each of those books again once more in the show notes here. And looking forward, I imagine Rob will be back in studio on Monday. I mentioned I've been away. I thought I managed to get away with it for the most part, but over the last couple of days, a couple of you have pointed out whether it just be, the fact that Rob hasn't been here on Mondays and the number of remote guests. And one guy did point out a slightly different sound in my voice, that maybe I was using a new microphone that usually indicates maybe I'm away. I went out of town on Halloween, headed down towards, not the cottage, but towards my parents' place. They live not too far from my sister. I wanted to see, I got a couple nieces and nephews down there who were going to do the Halloween thing, and thought it might be fun to see them in their costumes. And I had planned to stay for about a week, and a week came, and, things happen, and decided to wait and put in a couple more days. And so I've rolled back into town here early this week, and this is the first time back in the actual studio, but we kept the shows coming. Hope you enjoyed those. Thanks again to Kevin Mickey for sitting in this time on the Monday morning episode of TCA. Had a great time talking to him about some Blue Jays stuff, left hanging out there. I wouldn't, maybe overstating it to call it a great time. It's a little sad still talking Blue Jays, but a good conversation with him. Also about some of the up-and-coming guys who are forcing their way into the Team Canada men's Olympic hockey conversation or situation. The guys that are going to be on the radar that maybe we didn't think were going to be, and who may be falling out. So if you missed that on Monday, it's up now at tallcanaudio.com or wherever you're hearing me right now. One of the things we didn't really get into on Monday morning with Kevin Mickey was this pretty big news for the Ottawa REDBLACKS and the CFL, but bringing in Ryan Dinwiddie as their new head coach and general manager. And look, as far as the GM thing goes, it sounds like that was something that Dinwiddie had been interested in anyway, and had always sort of envisioned himself as both, and wanting to have more input on the players that were going to be on his roster. I don't think that's uncommon for a lot of coaches, but it is somewhat uncommon now to have someone who actually does hold both positions. It's normally more like having a very powerful head coach who's included in a lot of player personnel meetings and which free agents and trades you're going to make. To actually give a guy both titles is interesting. But that was the only way that the Red Blacks were going to be able to do this. Like most leagues, the CFL has sort of and I don't know that it's a league-wide thing as much as team by team. We'll let you talk to somebody else if it's for a promotion, but if you're an assistant coach somewhere, you can't just decide, screw my contract, I'd like to go be an assistant coach somewhere else. But if someone's offering you a head coach job, your team will normally let you pursue that. In this case, certainly the Red Blacks had an opening at head coach. We didn't know they had an opening at GM, and I'll be honest with you, when the news that Ryan Dinwiddie was coming into Ottawa as coach and GM, the first tweet or two I saw from different reporters did not include the news that Sean Burke would move into the, whatever they're calling it, VP of football ops position. It sort of sounded like maybe for a moment that Dinwiddie was taking both jobs and maybe Sean Burke was out. But sure enough, Sean Burke is staying. They're trying to sell it as his responsibilities won't change a whole lot. That's a tough sell for me because if Ryan Dinwiddie is wanting legitimately to be a GM and Sean Burke was the GM, just changing titles and then claiming your day-to-day work is going to be the same doesn't really fly because obviously part of the reason Dinwiddie came here was to do that job. So look, I'm not saying it's not going to work. I'm not saying it's going to be unharmonious or whatever, that there's going to be issues there. I'm just saying I'm not certain they've totally worked out how all of this is going to come together, who handles what. And for the moment, they're just selling it as smooth sailing to the media and the fan base. And again, that's not me saying it won't be smooth sailing. I'm just saying I don't see how the version of this that's being given to us right now is exactly the way it's going to play out. But as I said, this was the only way to get it done. If Ryan Dinwiddie was their guy, then you had no choice but to, if you were going to pry him out of Toronto, it was going to have to be with a promotion. He can't just leave as head coach to come be your head coach, but he can leave as head coach to come be your GM and then appoint himself essentially head coach, which is in a roundabout way what's happened here. Obviously in Toronto, Pinball Clemens is the GM. That was going to be a tough sell as a, move pinball kind of thing. He is by far the most popular CFL figure in Toronto and has been for decades. Now, there was an interesting note that came out just the other day that Toronto was expecting to have the opportunity to match whatever offer was coming from Ottawa, that Dinwiddie would circle back and see if maybe Pinball was willing to move or if there was something to be worked out that way. And the report said that Toronto was not, at the end of the day, given that opportunity. So that's interesting. I guess if he'd decided he'd worked it out in Ottawa, was happier in that situation, or maybe just deep down knew that even if they did something similar in Toronto, like maybe there's another title you can give Pinball and then give Dinwiddie the GM title in Toronto, but maybe he knew there was still certain things he wouldn't have gotten control there that Ottawa is offering him. But that was interesting, just as a side note, that Toronto thought they would get the chance to match and didn't. Look, I think it's good news. I think it's a good hire. This organization in Ottawa needs stability and needs someone with experience. I guess it was a week and a half ago now that Bunda was here, and sort of we talked about right then on the heels of Bob Dice being dismissed that they couldn't go down the road of another inexperienced hire. And he threw out names like Orlando Steinauer and Mike O'Shea. And I scoffed at him and said, I don't think there's any chance Mike O'Shea is going to be in play. And it turns out now he is. So this is why when it comes to CFL stuff especially, and maybe on most things, you should listen to Bunda more than you should listen to me. But I saw the point he was driving at. The type of name he was, someone well-respected, someone well-known with a long track record in the CFL, and major experience. Well, Ryan Dinwiddie has that. And he's won 2 out of the last 3 Grey Cups. He's been around the league for a long time. And he demands the respect of his players. And this sounds like not all that dissimilar to what we hear about in lots of sports, that like after you've tried one route, the easygoing players coach, it's now got to be the hard-ass coach. We've seen that play out, that pendulum swing on multiple teams in multiple sports. And I don't want to overstate it with Ryan Dinwiddie, but he is known to be significantly more demanding and controlling of his players. The players like him, the players respect him and the job that he's doing, but I don't think you're going to hear those same sorts of stories that you used to hear about Bob Dice about how much the players loved him. And again, it won't be because these players dislike Ryan Dinwiddie, but this will be a slightly different vibe, and it sounds like this team perhaps needed a slightly different vibe. Maybe that's something we can get into on another day. But this is a major coup. They needed stability, and they have just brought stability. And I think, I don't know if a new head coach and GM is the type of thing that gets somebody who was on the fence about their season tickets to renew. It might be for hardcores. But it is a hire that fans can look at and say, okay, that's a good hire. That's heading in the right direction. And even if you're not ready to give the Red Blacks your money again for season ticket holders, I think it does say, okay, you've got my attention now. Like, I respect that move. I think you're headed in the right direction, and let's see where it goes from here. And it does open up a bit of some dominoes. There is now a pretty gaping hole in Toronto. And we have heard that Mike O'Shea has already been granted permission to speak to Toronto. I'm not sure. I guess it's possible that Winnipeg could be at a point where they're looking to make a change. They're making a change. But this is the first year in 6 years that the Bombers haven't at least played in the Grey Cup. So they have been successful. They wouldn't be, I don't think, anxious to see Mike O'Shea leave after one down year. But maybe he's got a say in it. Maybe he's ready to take on a new challenge, and maybe he looks at Toronto and says, that's a spot I'm familiar with, got some history with, and, he doesn't love the media part of it, is something that was reported on 3 Down Nation. And this sounds funny, and it only works this way in the CFL, but in Winnipeg, there's a lot of media commitments. In Toronto, there really isn't. If he's the type of guy who likes to just do his job, be a football coach, and not be tied up talking to media and being under the microscope of a major CFL market, like a Winnipeg or a Regina, and I say it in jest, but you all understand how absurd this is, go to Toronto. No one will care. No one will talk to you. Everybody will leave you alone. Short of you making the Grey Cup when all of a sudden the city wakes up and notices, oh, hey, we love a winner. All right. Maybe that week you'll have some extra media to talk to. But if that's something that's important to Mike O'Shea, is getting out of the spotlight, then leaving Winnipeg and going to Toronto might be a smart move for him. He knows pinball has a history with him as well. There's talk that the Argos would like to also speak to Steinhauer. I don't know. I haven't seen whether or not that's been granted. But it does open up some musical chairs here around the East in the CFL. And to circle it back here to the nation's capital, I guess I've said it. This is a positive move. It's a step in the right direction. It's what they needed to do. I think it's going to get players' attention because it's suddenly going to become harder and harder, as you've been more and more irrelevant here for a while, to get free agents and get guys to come. If they see now, oh, they got a serious coach and they've got a serious GM, maybe that gets you a little more attention. Maybe that gets you an extra minute on the phone with somebody. Maybe that gets you somebody to consider coming in here. One of the concerns I have, and I have floated this to a couple of people I know, and they said, OSEG isn't this stupid. that remains to be seen, is the Chad Kelly of it all. And is Drew Brown, are you sold as a Red Blacks fan that Drew Brown is a legit starting quarterback? I'm not yet. We just haven't seen enough. He hasn't been healthy enough. And I'm not convinced he's been given the right playbook. So we may be given the chance to find out under a different, and that's another interesting part of this. Ryan Dinwiddie is not just the coach and GM. He will also be the offensive coordinator, the play caller. So that saves you some money on your coaching staff. But with Drew Brown getting the right play calls and Drew Brown staying healthy, are you confident that he could be your starter? Yeah, he could. But if Ryan Dinwiddie isn't sold on that, does he try and bring in Chad Kelly and all the problems that come with that? And to be fair, Ryan Dinwiddie has defended Chad Kelly, which is a strike against in my book. It won't be for everybody, and that's fine. But that's a major question mark here. If he's not sold on Drew Brown and you're looking around for another... You know what I'm saying? Like he's looking around in this league and he can't find himself another quarterback. Does he go, I know a guy. I can protect him here. I can help him rehab his reputation in a new market. I don't know. The couple of people I've spoken to have said Oseg won't go there and won't do that. I hope that's true. I'm not convinced of that yet. We'll see how the offseason plays out. I did want to bring up again the PWHL conversation that I had on the Monday morning show on the back half of that. And if I'm being fair, I took a little bit of blowback, but not as much as I expected. I think a lot of people that I heard from were fairly even-keeled about it. Didn't all agree, but said that sometimes the way the debate is playing out. And really, I guess my commentary was as much about that as it was about the statistics and the numbers that we're dealing with here and trying to strike a deal between gender equality, professional sports, and taxpayer dollars. It's a tough line to walk. And I obviously gave my opinions on that. But the commentary was as much about the debate around it and how we seem to be incapable of having one. At least a constructive one. And I did get some feedback on that stated that a lot of people agreed with that. That perhaps some respect was more deserved going in both directions on wherever you fall on this. I saw a piece on, it was just this morning, so Wednesday morning, from Alicia Cote, who writes for the Ice Garden and covers the PWHL and the Ottawa Charge. And she went really deep on this issue, and she was someone who had been critical in an earlier piece, and we will link to her piece today. I'm not going to paraphrase too much for her here. The piece was too good for me to be bothered to do that. You should check it out for yourself. We'll link to it in the show notes. Just sort of going through the fact that she had been critical of this and having done some more research and seeing the fact that this arena is not far from being condemned. Like, it's 60 years old and it has its issues. And you can't dick around forever trying to decide what to do. And that alone isn't a good enough reason to say, well, then screw the PWHL. Let's just do what we were always going to do. But it does mean we have to get something going. And she had more information than what I did. I was confident in what I said. She had the dates and some city records in her piece, again, that we'll link to, that talks about this program, or this project, Lansdowne 2.0, long predates the PWHL. We were starting to see plans and suggestions and things being drawn up in 2021, 2022, before anyone had heard a whiff about the PWHL. And the amount of money that it was going to take and the amount of more time it was going to take to rejig this whole thing to allow for another couple of thousand seats to be put in was just not going to be feasible. But the reason I bring that up specifically is it lends some more credence, at least in my opinion, to my argument, which I may be slightly biased towards. That this wasn't about putting the squeeze on the PWHL or intentionally disrespecting women's sports. The PWHL arrived here with this train already a decent way down the tracks. And just because there hadn't been a shovel in the ground yet doesn't mean that this wasn't all but set in stone. You can stop. Hell, you can stop a long time after you've put the first shovel in the ground. There's still room to make some adjustments. So it wasn't a drop dead date per se, but this idea that City Council and OSEG and everybody was out to get the PWHL and be unfair to the PWHL, it just doesn't hold water. The timeline is so much longer than that. And if you were going to delay and you were going to rejig and try and do this again, and take that time, construction costs only go up. Most of the time it's by the year, sometimes it's by the month. Labor costs go up, materials go up. Every day that you put this off, the project gets more expensive. And you're still left with the issue that I brought up, which to me was my biggest problem, was that this is a league designed to make money working with a taxpayer-funded arena. And the moment that you reached 8,500 fans as your, regular, let's say you build the attendance, build the arena to 8,500, and then 3 years into it, 5 years into it, the PWHL realizes we actually are drawing enough that our regular, our average attendance is 8,600. They're gone. They will be at the new Sens building. Now, there would be some sort of lease that was lasting another 2 years, another 5 years, however long it would have been. But there was no commitment from the PWHL and the one billionaire that owns the league to the city of Ottawa that would have allowed them to say, okay, if you're committing to us for 25 or 30 years, we can talk about this. But otherwise, no. And since the PWHL is professional sports, and since we all think it's only going to grow and only going to get bigger, at some point, even at 8,500, it will outgrow TD Place. And that's something we should be happy about. That's something we should be excited about, to see them move to the new building at LeBreton and partner with the Sens, which is the natural outcome to this. I don't know if it's in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, but that's where we're going. That is where this will grow to. And now all of a sudden, the city of Ottawa is on the hook for a building way too big that they don't have a tenant for. 67s don't need that kind of number anymore. So anyway, that's an argument we already had on Monday. But I did want to circle back on it. Some of the replies, some of the emails and messages and stuff that we get was more measured than I thought it would be. And I appreciate that. Maybe that speaks to the type of audience that we have on this show. But it's an interesting debate, and it's a frustrating situation because it does put the PWHL in a tough spot right now for the immediate future. It's a bad spot to be in. But it wasn't done intentionally, and it's not long term. So, like I said, I encourage you to check out this piece by Alicia Cote that we will link to. It is very well done. And it includes a lot more needing upgrades to continue to be a concert venue, and that they already have clients and other events that won't come back to TD right now until it's upgraded because it's too old and out of date, and the urgency needed to get this thing moving. There's a lot of factors at play. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Last thing, and I don't know whether or not it's worth it to get into it here on the Sens or the Leafs or any of the other NHL teams again right now. Like I said, Cheryl Pounder will be on the show on Thursday. No doubt that will be hockey heavy. But I don't know. Like with the Sens there on Tuesday night, I didn't get a chance to watch most. Honestly, I didn't get a chance to watch much of the Leafs game either. And when I say I didn't get a chance, I just didn't care. I'm having a hard time. And I can't remember if I brought this up on the show already. It reminds me a little bit of two different things, and both of which I've talked about on the show here, so there's no need to go in depth about. But at the end of the World Juniors, every year, I'm just like, oh, so now it's a random Tuesday night, Ottawa against Philadelphia, or Toronto against Buffalo, and just like mid-season, nothing matters. It's not at the same pace. There's not the same intensity. There's not the same stakes. And I just don't care. It takes me a week or so before I want to get into it again. And it's the same, and we've certainly talked about this on the show every year, usually after the first round, but occasionally after the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, when the Leafs go down in flames, I'm sort of out for the next round. And not entirely, and not, I've said to Rob, I'm kind of sulking a little bit. It's like, I don't care about this. And it's like Florida, Carolina, and there's a part of me that's like, why would I care? It's fucking Florida and Carolina. And the other part's like, well, both of those teams have made it further than yours. Maybe you should watch some good hockey. But my enthusiasm is just in the dumps. And that's sort of where I've been at on the NHL since the World Series. And I was going to say since the World Series ended, but basically through the entire first month of the NHL season, I couldn't care less about hockey. If one of the teams I like to keep an eye on for the sake of the show was playing earlier in the day or whatever, fine. I'd probably check out a little, or more so check it out a little, check in a little. But if it was a conflict at all with the Jays, or even the other series, right, the NLCS, or the other American League series when we were a little earlier on in the playoffs, it was all baseball. And now that the World Series is over and we lost, like, I don't know if it would have been different if we'd won and they'd left you feeling good. But I'm just like, the next night, who cares? I think it was Leafs and Penguins, and the Leafs were down 3-0. I just got up and I went and did other things. And I hadn't done a little, tantrum, if you wanted to call it that. Like, it didn't have that kind of emotion. It wasn't like, fuck these guys, I'm not watching this. I went to do something during the second intermission, and I missed most of the third period as I continued to putter away at it. It's fun to putter at things sometimes. And when I came back, I can't remember. They were either tied at 3 or up 4-3, and there wasn't like this great relief either. It was just like, well, I'd prefer to win than lose, but otherwise I don't care. I just can't get back into it. I'm having a really difficult time investing in November hockey, and there absolutely is an element of it that the Leafs are incredibly disappointing. And the Sens are a bit better, but they're not lighting the world on fire. And I saw someone on Sens Twitter, I forget who now, and it doesn't really matter. And this is going back probably 10 days, maybe 2 weeks ago, already saying, I'm not buying in on the Sens. And it wasn't like, I don't think they're for real. It was just, I'm not as emotionally invested as I used to be. And I found that to be a little bit strange, because the Sens are at least on the way up and, in theory, entering a really competitive window. The Leafs, I guess you could say right now, maybe are on the way down very quickly, but at minimum are at the back end of whatever their competitive window was supposed to be. And so I was surprised to see a Sens fan having that reaction right now. And I don't know that it had anything to do with the baseball hangover or anything like that. But that's sort of where I've been at. I'm just like, I'm having a hard time investing. So there it was, Tuesday night. Both the Leafs and the Sens are playing. I can sit down and watch either one of them start to finish or go back and forth. And I turned it on in the first. And by the end of the first, I was just doing other things. I'm reading. I'm up. I'm unpacking. I'm setting up the studio again. There's some pieces that I have to take when I travel. Just not invested at all. And so as far as the Sens go on Tuesday night, it's a disappointing loss after you have a 2-0 lead, but Dallas is a good team. And I think the biggest concern for the Senators has been Linus Ullmark, and by all accounts, he was really good against Dallas. So sometimes that just happens. I don't know that it's reason for concern. In fact, if anything, as frustrating as blowing a lead like that, even to a team as good as Dallas can be, maybe there's a reason for optimism coming out of that game if it looks like Ullmark is rounding back into form. Now, one game obviously is not enough to say that, great, perfect, he's back. But if it starts to trend that way, if he starts to stack up good performance after good performance on top of this one, then you can live with an overtime loss to the Dallas Stars if it starts to turn your goalie's season around. Beyond that, I'm not going to speak like I know anything. I've hardly watched. The Leafs are getting wrecked by the Bruins. And I haven't watched a whole lot more of them than I have the Sens. But coming out of the weekend, they had won 3 in a row. Or going into the weekend, excuse me. They had won 3 in a row and 5 of 6. You're like, all right. Bit of a rocky start. Guys finding their legs. Maybe they're figuring it out. Now you've lost 3 in a row. Austin Matthews and Anthony Stolarz leave Tuesday's game with injuries. At the time I'm recording this, I have no idea how serious either of those are going to turn out to be. But it's not good news. And you didn't really have great news anyway. The Leafs right now are on pace for 82 points, which is not going to get it done. I'm kind of over the people I see online go, oh, here we go for Gavin McKenna. Thank God they lottery protected the pick. They're not going to be that bad. But they may be bad enough that this start they can't dig out from. Like, they may be life and death all the way here just to be in the wild card race. Like, maybe that's overly dramatic. Maybe I'm understating how much they're underperforming right now. Love to use the prefix under in 2 words in the same sentence. I don't know. But they've been mediocre, and they've been mediocre with William Nylander, John Tavares, and Matthew Nyes all on, unreal heaters to start the year. All 3 unsustainable. Really good players go through these from time to time. The Leafs have been lucky to have all 3 of these guys get off to fantastic starts. It's allowed to at least keep their head somewhat near the water level. I don't know if their head's above water, but they're not fully on the bottom. And yet, even with all 3 of those guys having that kind of start, the team is mediocre. What happens when those 3 guys inevitably come back to earth a little bit? You got Max Domi getting caved in. You got Matthews showing flashes a little bit sometimes of being close to what he's supposed to be, but not consistently. And now, who knows? Maybe it was just something something minor. He left the game and he'll be fine Thursday. Maybe he's out for 3 months taking flights to Germany. We don't know with this guy. Stolarz is now hurt. You cannot rush back Joseph Woll just because you have a problem here. He has not had a training camp. He has not had a start to the season. You have to let him go through his normal process, and yet I'm terrified I'm going to wake up on Thursday morning and see that he's starting for them on Thursday. Would be a horribly short-sighted thing to do, but I assume that's what they'll do. They're in a bad spot. They have gotten bigger and slower and less talented for year after year after year, and it wasn't accidental. This is the design. This is what Brad Treliving and Craig Berube want. And to wrap it up, if I see one more person say, oh, it looks like Craig Berube's about to blow, or how much more can Craig Berube take, and I'm seeing these articles, they're in The Athletic, they're in The Star, that this is not going the way Craig Berube wants, Craig Berube might be part of the goddamn problem. He wasn't the right hire a year and a half ago. And so to sit there now and go, oh, Craig Berube just can't get these guys to do what he wants them to do. They were never gonna. Understand your roster and lean into it. If you've got a team with 12 William Nylander style forwards and you want them to all play like they're Thomas Holmstrom, you're going to have a bad time. Same thing, vice versa. So, turns out I do care. I may still have a little emotion left for the NHL at the moment. That's enough for today. Cheryl Pounder will be here on the Thursday morning edition of the show. We'll talk a lot of hockey there. I am really excited to have her in studio for the first time for a pod and a pint and a pod. I forget how I sell it to guests. I think I lead with the pint. That's how you get people's attention. We've had her on the show before. but she'll make her in-studio debut on Thursday. I hope you're all looking forward to that. I know I am. Should be a lot of fun. I don't know that I've ever seen anyone make the jump from player to broadcaster so seamlessly and so unanimously positively. I don't see people out-ripping Cheryl Pounder, whether it be for legitimate grievances or the same knuckle-draggers that just won't listen to any women's hockey player on their panel. Somehow Cheryl has been, for the most part at least, immune to that. It's been a terrific start to her broadcasting career, and she has become one of the big dogs on that TSN panel. Big events, World Junior, she's going to be at the Olympics, calling men's and women's action. She's now as big as any broadcaster on the hockey side in Canada, and she's terrific at it. And for some reason, she's agreed to come in here on Thursday. So we will look forward to that. Until then, my name is Matt Robinson. Thank you so much for listening. As I said, check the show notes for the link to the Alicia Cote article on the Lansdowne 2.0 PWHL situation. It's terrific. And we will also include the links once more to the books I referenced at the beginning of the show for the little TCA Book Club we've had going on here lately. So we'll see you on Thursday morning with Cheryl Pounder.
I thought it generally sucked. I didn't think it was a specific suck. I thought it was like an all-encompassing type of suck. So, we're going to try and rectify that. But for right now, I'm going to be pretty pissed about it.